Where'd the crystal critters go?
It's a dinosaur! A gigantic dinosaur is attacking our boy! Why did you say that?
What? No.
We finally made it to the end of the Godzilla Anime trilogy. If you haven't seen my reviews for the other two videos, which you probably have, my opinions of them have been pretty negative. So the big question was, when Godzilla 3 The Planet Eater came out, was, would this episode redeem the series? Was this the golden egg at the end of the crappy rainbow? That was a bad analogy, I'm sorry. No, not really. But we do finally get to see a monster fight. The premise of this movie is that after humanity loses pretty much all of their artillery in the first episode, and after they lost all of their stupid Mechagodzilla city in the second, humanity's only chance for defeating Godzilla is to put their trust in God and hope that God can defeat Godzilla. Too bad anime always portrays religion in a negative context, because they all form this huge cult and they end up summoning King Ghidorah. When he first shows up, we get this weird scene of him mutilating all the people in this weird ceremony. And for some reason, whenever he kills someone, all their blood is like this bright blue color. Gotta love that censorship. One thing I've appreciated about these Godzilla anime is their references to past Godzilla movies. And this one has very little. The only ones I could find are how the Eggsif turn out to be evil and are actually controlling King Ghidorah, just like they did in the movie Monster Zero. This plot twist would have been a lot cooler if the Bill Saluto hadn't done the exact same thing in the last film. Also, Mothra's egg shows up, and that's really it. This movie does take some ideas from Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster, though. Godzilla flies in a scene, and a large portion of this movie is devoted to these weird acid trip sequences, like more than you would expect. A big part of this movie is that Mephies is trying to convince Haruo that man's purpose is to die, and that he should take comfort in that and commit suicide. That's nice. This is all done through this huge dream sequence, which is mostly scenes of what looks like stock background effects from Footage Crate. When the movie's not tripping balls, it's pretty good though. Now, a lot of people are complaining about Ghidorah's appearance. King Ghidorah is Godzilla's arch nemesis because he's appeared in a lot of episodes. He's appeared in the Showa series, the Heisei, the Millennium, the Legendary, the cancelled sequel to Shin Godzilla, and even Courage the Cowardly Dog. With many appearances like that, there's bound to be some creative changes to him. And in this one, he only appears as his classic dragon form in Visions. He spends most of his time as three giant snakes coming out of a black hole or some other dimension or something else. I don't know, it's anime, come on, what do you want? This is clearly better than turning Godzilla into a freaking city, looking to a city on the edge of battle. There are still a lot of big fans who are upset by this, and I was pretty upset too when I saw the trailer. But over time, it's grown on me. His design, I feel, is very much a callback to Orochi, which was the inspiration for Ghidorah. But that begs the question, why didn't they just use Orochi? They didn't have to make it Ghidorah. I've wanted to see Godzilla and Orochi fight since I was like 8 years old. Now I get that Ghidorah is everybody's favorite, and Toho probably wouldn't let them use anyone else because they were afraid it wouldn't make money, but come on, guys. Come on, Orochi, look at that. Oh, hey guys, did you know Mothra's in this movie? Yeah, sorry this came out of nowhere, but so does Mothra in the movie. The ending of this movie comes out of freaking nowhere. I just have to say that, okay? After Godzilla Earth gives Ghidorah the smackdown, which is awesome, and should have been in all of the episodes, humanity seems at peace and everything is just fine. But soon they find out that they can reactivate the Gundam Bird Diver by placing Master Sergeant Weyland Yutani's dead body inside. Haruo leaves his pregnant wife. Oh yeah, did I mention this movie has the first sex scene in a Godzilla movie? Probably because that scene pisses me off. Anyway, Haruo gets inside the Evangelicon and just tries to fight Godzilla and ends up getting blown up. That's how the movie ends. I've interpreted this ending with two different meanings. The first interpretation I have is also the most commonly accepted one. Doc Martin says they can use the technology from the mech suit to rebuild society, which by doing so, they would eventually end up repeating what happened in the past, just end up creating more war, destruction, and monsters. Mephies discusses how when a society reaches a certain point, they lose their humanity, and thus they create all the different monsters in their own destruction. By having Haruo destroy the suit, he delays humanity's destruction for a few thousand years, showing that Godzilla isn't necessarily the destroyer of humanity, but more, the keeper of peace, sort of. The second interpretation I have, which is the one I prefer, comes from the fact that Mephies discusses how Haruo's anger and hatred for Godzilla come from his fear of humanity's destruction and death. A huge part of this movie is Nephew's trying to convince Haruo to give up on those and just to accept death. And by the end of the movie, you think that Haruo has given up on his fears and stuff, that he's come to terms with his place in the ecosystem. He no longer has any desires to hunt down Godzilla. But when he finds out that the mobile suit Vulture works, he goes right back to trying to kill Godzilla, showing that after all that happened, Haruo never learned a thing, and by doing so, proved Metphies was right. This interpretation is a lot darker and definitely more depressing, which I kinda like, as a lot of the older classic Godzilla movies had these bittersweet endings. Other evidence for this interpretation is how, after the credits, we get this scene showing Mothra's people performing the ceremony, where everyone discusses their fears, suggesting that in the end, fear will consume humanity and lead to its downfall. Also how Haruo is holding his ex-girlfriend's body, showing how he would rather leave his wife Miyana, or Mayana, I forget how you pronounce her name, who established earlier in the movie that she has no concept of hatred or losing, to be with Yuko, who was the exact opposite of that. In conclusion, Godzilla the Planet Eater brought me everything I wanted. It's got Mothra, it's got destruction, it's got monster smackdowns, but still never really satisfied my thirst. But it is the only one I can say for sure I was never bored with watching. I would have given this one a higher rating, but the fact that Kobun Shinzuno was told to market this movie more towards women and, you know, put stuff like this in it, I have to lower it down to 1 out of 5. I was gonna rank these all at the end, but honestly they're all at the same level, you know? So instead what I'm just gonna do is I'm gonna do the top 10 best things to come out of the Godzilla anime. Number 1, the dubbing. I really like the dubbing in this movie. The voice actors do a really good job, and you can see that they actually care. When most Godzilla movies, the people doing the dubbing don't care at all.
We will be leaving shortly. Would the crew please all go to their stations immediately?
It just ruins the movie. Number 2, the drone scene. I really like the scene where they send out the drones to scout out Earth. This scene feels like it belongs in a horror movie, which I really like.
Maybe it was thunder or lightning. Fool! No one could possibly forget that roar.
Number 3, the Mechagodzilla twist. No, not that he's a stupid city, I hate that. But the fact that he turns out to be evil and is meant to destroy humanity, I love that. Number 4, the ending. I don't really know what it's about, but I like it. Number 5, the score. Very few movies impress me with their musical score. Heck, most of the time I don't even notice them. These anime, specifically the first one, really good scores. Number 6, Godzilla snapping King Ghidorah's jaw. Number 8, the opening sequence. Not just the montage, but all of it. It's really well done. I like it. Number 9, Godzilla snapping King Ghidorah's jaw. And number 10, King Ghidorah's entrance. This weird cult thing. I like this. I'm all about that. There you have it. That's everything I have to say about these Godzilla anime. I'm sick and tired of talking about these movies. I want to review some good Godzilla movies. Can May please come faster? I'm out.